We'll go ahead and start questions today with Jacob to Coach's right.
Saturday, you mentioned how playing in the SEC tournament is a pretty big stage. How do you prepare the guys, or can you prepare the guys for that stage who haven't played in it before?
Well, we've obviously already talked about it, and certainly a lot of our older transfers have played in various conference tournaments and even postseason opportunities, so they'll have experience with what we're talking about. Some of our younger, obviously freshmen, have never played in these situations, but like most programs, it just is what it is. It's part of the growing process, and they now have 31 games under their belt, and they've traveled and played in, neutral site games, played in obviously rough away environments, all sorts of starting times. So it's just another step in gaining experience that way.
We saw King in a boot in crutches last game. Do you have any just update on his injury right now?
Unfortunately, he's got a foot injury that will, put him out for the rest of the season.
Go ahead, Colin.
I know the teams come out later today, but I'm sure you're aware Josh is pretty good at basketball. He's been all SEC in previous seasons. What have you seen from him this year in this campaign? I know you've talked about how he's grown as a leader and going into the SEC tournament. How big of a factor is he for you?
Yeah, it's been fun to watch his maturation as a player, from his freshman year, where he early in the season kind of had a breakout game or two. I remember going to Connecticut for a tournament, and he had a huge game in our tournament that fall, and that was kind of his coming out party, if you will. And I really harken back to those days when he, became our leading scorer, but the locker room embraced him, and he did it in a way where, in this day and age, it could cause problems, with some people that maybe thought they were going to be in that role as older players in the program, and because of his approach and work ethic and humility, that was never a problem at all. And now, as finishing his junior year, he's had a remarkable career thus far, both individually and as a team. Obviously, this particular year, it's not going to be the team type season that he nor anyone would want to have. But he's got the opportunity to play in back-to-back NCAA tournaments, which obviously right now doesn't look like it will be the case. But individually, he keeps upping his game. He's one of the top scorers in the country. I fully expect him to be on one of the all-conference teams. I'm sure you guys know the rules. We don't get a vote, for our own players. I know where I'd vote him, but I don't get that opportunity. But we'll have to wait and see, like everybody else, when it comes out this afternoon. But he certainly, means a lot to our program and our fan base, and rightfully so.
We'll go ahead, head to Danny P, and then we'll slide back over to Jacob to Coach's right.
Of course, first opponent is Auburn again. Hadn't been too long ago since we played him. Of course, obviously, Josh had a great game that night. I'm sure they'll try to adjust to what he did and vice versa. So just talk about that matchup.
Yeah, I'd imagine you can't find a brighter red pen available to circle him on the scouting report for Auburn, considering what he did the first time we played him at home. And they had made some adjustments, on the fly to try to slow him down and put the ball in some of his teammates' hands, which I'd assume will be the case at some point during the game, maybe the start. Who knows? I don't get to coach their team or see their practices, but I'm sure they'll have a plan to try to disrupt him and not let him get going that way, and we'll have to adjust to whatever they decide to do. But, at this point in the year, the familiarity with each other is, more, right? Both ways, which is good and bad, I guess. You're just trying to reset, who we're playing and their strengths and weaknesses, and try to have two really good practices today and tomorrow before, we get the opportunity to play on Wednesday.
Just looking at him during pregame, T. Bartlett looks like a completely different person than whenever we saw him in the preseason. Just give another update on how he's progressing.
Yeah, I mean, physically, like you said, he's done a tremendous job in transforming his body to, closer to where it needs to be to compete at this level. And he's, his theme has, at least from us, has been, you're going to have to work while nobody's watching. You're going to have to, he's on a whole different training regiment than anyone else is on our team for obvious reasons. And, he's been pretty consistent with it. He's been allowed to practice. And so he gets opportunities to kind of show us where he's at. And certainly he has, like I said, a different training itinerary than the players that are, active and eligible and playing in our games. But it will be a big off season for him. He wasn't here until August, and that certainly set him behind. But now, he's been around it and played, practiced against it, and he'll have this whole off season to continue to grow his game, get his body right, and hopefully be able to help our team next year.
We'll go back to Sam.
Probably hard to ask Josh for another 46 points in this game, but what else do you just remember from that Auburn win that kind of went well that maybe you can try to replicate in this game besides, Josh having that spectacular performance?
Yeah, I remember us, playing with a purpose defensively. I thought Keyshawn Hall obviously ended up having a really big game as well. But if I remember correctly, I thought we guarded him pretty well. Sometimes good offense is just better than solid defense. And I thought individually for him a lot, he just made some big-time plays. He's a really good player. But how we defended him, was good. It's just he was better in some certain situations and possessions. But that's what stuck out to me the most was I thought we were really assignment correct on what we were trying to do for the most part against what they run, and then our pressure on the ball and our line of scrimmage. We talk about the line of scrimmage with these guys a lot lately where, we're not trying to give ground, after the catch. We're trying to make a stand, if you will, and not allow, any sort of penetration at point of attack. And we've struggled with that a lot this year, but, that was the game after Ole Miss, and, I thought both of those games were two of our better games when it came to, just guarding the basketball that way.
Time for a few more before Coach gets to practice. We'll go to Colin and then Sam to wrap it up.
Kind of adding to that, obviously Josh has been playing really well down the stretch of SEC play, but it seems like the offense as a whole has had some really good performances, even in matchups where they're outscored. I guess, what have you seen that's maybe behind that?
Yeah, I mean, there's been too many games as I look back at them, thinking to myself and even sharing with the team that, our defense, let us down. A lot of second halves as well. We've had some poor starts, obviously, but we've had some games where we just couldn't get enough stops. We just couldn't get enough string of stops to, keep the momentum or turn the tide, depending on where the score was at. But offensively, hasn't been as big an issue as the other side of the ball lately. We've had plenty of games prior to down the stretch where, we weren't very good at that end either. But, that's what you would expect, going down the stretches. Guys have played together long enough. We've coached them long enough to kind of know where their spots are, where to get certain guys' shots, what's working for this particular team offensively, and trying to put them in those sweet spots, and we've been better at that. But like I said, you were kind not to ask about the other side, but that's kind of let us down, which is really hard to say, but it's factual.
Go ahead, Sam.
If you've been able to win at least one SEC tournament game every year, just how do you kind of approach game planning and scouting for this tournament? Is it kind of just have to take it one game at a time, or how do you kind of approach that?
Yeah, I've thought about that too. That's certainly a streak that we want to keep going. I don't know if I'll share it with the guys or not. I don't think it's going to have much, if anything, to do with their motivation or their play hard. But, you're always trying to find whatever edge you can to motivate your team and your players. But certainly as the coach who's, been here the longest and will be here the longest, that's something that you want to keep going. I just really want to, for our team, to have that feeling again of what it feels like to put the work in, which they've continued to do, and then be rewarded for it when the lights are on, of winning. And, the platform down there, the lights, what comes with this tournament is exciting. There'll be 16 programs down there and 16 fan bases and a lot of eyeballs, and the intensity usually goes up a notch in those type of environments, and that's what I expect from our team as well. But before I go, I have no idea how many guys are going down there for you guys. I have no idea, but I may not see some of you. Who knows how the end will unfold. But I just want to thank you for your coverage that you guys have provided us. I would imagine, I've never been a reporter, that when you have to follow a team that's not doing as well, it's probably not as fun for you guys either. It's probably a personal viewpoint that you guys have or don't have, but I just can't imagine it's quite as much fun. But I appreciate you guys showing up and covering us and being professional, and it's not lost on me, so thank you.
All right. See you guys in Nashville.
You bet.